You look not. You need to move over. You need to move this way.
To the left.
To the left.
To the left. And we're live.
Hello.
Hello. That episode was just on the other day.
Welcome. Wednesday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter. And Seinfeld is still the greatest show of all time.
It is. I don't think I get through a day without some sort of Seinfeld reference in my life.
Yes.
And when I'm with people and something happens and they don't get the reference, because usually in the case for me, it's like they're just way too young. It bothers me when people don't grasp my Seinfeld references.
I think it's very funny. And I'm just thinking, and you know, that blonde that was that actress in that show, that's like one of the best looking actresses that he ever had as like a girlfriend. And she's like, you need to stop doing the voice. I could do that. So what's your decision? I don't know.
That's good.
So what's going to be the Seinfeld reference for Jordan Chariton and the Amazon labor union? Is it going to be the ribbon? Who's not wearing the ribbon? I have to come up with something good. But
I don't know. I'm trying to grasp what you're trying to create here with a reference.
I don't know. We'll come up with something good. And of course, he'll always enjoy the references. You know him as the founder of Status Quo News. He is the best, as far as we're concerned, investigative journalist in the United States today. He has been covering the Amazon.
And no offense to you, Jordan, but you know, it's slim pickings in that category, people.
No, he understands.
Okay.
He understands. But nevertheless, has been covering the Amazon labor movement since its beginning.
Well, yeah, and since before, like with COVID and Chris Small's getting fired and all of that. I mean, like this has been going on for 2 years now.
It has been going on for far too long, but thankfully, this is an opportunity. There's always a lot of bad stuff to talk about in the news, but we finally have a reason to talk about some good stuff.
Yes, we do, and I think it's also happening in Alabama, but my only concern with that one is that we'll talk about that in a minute.
We'll get to that.
It's a different union, so we'll talk about that.
As I said, he is the founder of Status Quo News, investigative journalist, and somebody who should finally get verified, if you catch my drift.
Why isn't he verified?
Oh, you know, politics. Jordan Chariton, welcome back to Generational Change.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Jordan, how you doing?
Good.
Other than not being verified, apparently.
Well, I am Jordan. I am verified. Status quo, for some strange reason, after breaking story after story, after having more followers than many other verified accounts, after providing Twitter what they asked for, which was 3 stories from verified accounts that they link to us or reference us, we've been denied 4 months in a row. And it's easier to get a conversation with a CIA agent than anyone from Twitter or YouTube. So that's where we're at. I don't want the blue check for vanity. It actually helps your tweets and content get seen more in Twitter's algorithm. So they denied us. And even though an army of online folks yesterday tweeted Twitter support, haven't heard from them yet.
Yeah, I don't think you will. And as I sit here and listen to this, I realize why would they verify you and give credibility to what you're doing and then have to acknowledge that they don't ever address any of those things? Like, it's so much easier to keep you sort of, you know, as
in the weeds.
And well, you know, just sort of like a far out there, you know, person when you're not given that credibility. So like, I'm sitting here thinking, it's clearly not because you're not following the rules, and it's not because you haven't had enough people say that, like, so clearly it's personal.
Yeah, I don't know. It makes no sense. You know, for example, More Perfect Union, who do good work. I mean, they cover a lot of the strikes and union drives and worker stuff. I think they got verified when they had like 30 or 40,000 followers, and they should have been. We have 73,000. I keep getting denied. So I don't know. And personally, I mean, I've basically been shadow banned on Twitter for 4 years. Like my wife tells me, I don't see your tweets. So it goes all in with censorship and suppression we've talked about many times.
Well, they're not able to keep this story quiet anymore. Now they're going to have to talk about this. And I love seeing Chris Smalls on mainstream media telling them what's up. But yeah, this has been very exciting. We did a brief live the other day just to talk about it. But I feel like, and you have been covering it since the beginning, since before there even was the union effort. You were covering it just based on their work practices. But something where I just had this feeling the first time we had him on that he was going to actually do this. I did. I don't know why I thought and I wasn't as optimistic about Bessemer at all. I don't know, why. So what are your thoughts? Obviously, you've been out there since, yes?
Right.
And how is this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very grassroots kind of guerrilla style union effort. And what I mean by that is just Christian opened that warehouse a few years ago. He trained people at that warehouse. So it wasn't like an outside big union coming that don't know the workers, that don't know the lay of the land. I mean, Christian knew that building because he helped launch it. Derek Palmer, who's the vice president of the union, he's been there for 5 years. So when you have people familiar with the workers, familiar with the plight of the workers who have experienced the terrible working conditions, how many hours workers it takes for a lot of workers to get there because it's in Staten Island. When you basically have people that are Amazon and have worked there, makes a big difference in terms of being able to connect to workers who might be on the fence or afraid of losing their job because Amazon, flooded the zone with union busting and threats of we might have to cut hours, we might have to lay people off, our benefits might not be so great. So I think the success of this first union, they've taken a pause to celebrate, but they're already actively working for the next election, which is in a few weeks at the building right across the street. So it's celebratory, but also like we got business to do. And Christian has tweeted out that he's already been contacted by 50 other warehouses nationally and overseas.
Yeah, that's the exciting part, is that it's like going to be a domino effect. And I think what you were talking about, just that sort of camaraderie that they have based on, it's not a transient facility. And I think that my understanding is that the one in Bessemer is much more that, and they don't have that same sort of history. And that is also a case where I believe it's a national union. And so I'm wondering now if that might be the reason, or at least one of the reasons why that wasn't as successful there as they were just now in Staten Island.
Right. Absolutely. It's kind of interesting because Amazon, no disrespect to Starbucks workers, because what they're doing is amazing. I've never seen union busting like this. I mean, literally, you couldn't go to the bathroom without propaganda signs in the stool. Vote no. They were calling workers at their home, sending mailers to workers, changing bus routes where the workers get dropped off to move them further away from Christian and other organizers' tent. They were basically I think they spent nearly $5 million on union busting consultants that they brought in from out of state, who were pulling workers off their shift to give them lectures for a half hour, which penalized the workers because they're tracked by the minute, by the second for productivity. So I actually think what Amazon is doing, and we'll see what their immediate response is. They're huffing and puffing that they're going to challenge the results. They haven't done so yet. And I wouldn't put anything past them. But I think all that union busting actually backfired because essentially you have what I talked about, which is Christian Smalls, the organizers, were Amazon workers, and that went a long way towards connecting with workers that might not know about unions or might be on the fence. But you also had workers being forced to sit in, the same mandatory daily union busting sessions 10 times, 11 times, 12 times. We had video leaked to us from these union busting sessions. And ALU people got in there and started basically contesting the things they were saying and not taking it lying down. So I think it was one of those things like human psychology. If Amazon keeps telling you not to do something, if mommy keeps telling you not to do something, you kind of start wanting to go the other way. And I think we've seen that a little bit with Starbucks too. So you know, instead of during these union busting sessions, union campaigns, raising workers' wages, providing them better benefits, providing them longer break times, laying off with the tracking their every move, instead of providing them immediate relief that might make them want to unionize less because you're rewarding them now. They did the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Speaking with Jordan Chariton of Status Quo News, obviously, as we discussed, we had a very quick podcast on the day it happened. It was just too big of a story not to talk about. But we both agreed that, you know, Bezos was going to call together all the board heads and have sort of like a midnight meeting, if you will. And it's already apparent that they're going to get very aggressive with with basically every warehouse around the country. There's already reports that you cannot say union. You cannot say living wage. You cannot say, what was it, bathroom, I think? There is...
Don't forget slave labor.
Slave labor. Mm-hmm. So there is going to be a massive backlash in regards to this. How do you foresee it unfolding over the next, we'll say, 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be a party pooper here, but I do not rule out them threatening to close the warehouse. I do not rule out them starting to fire a lot of these union organizers. Frankly, Jeff Bezos knows better than anyone. We have basically labor and regulatory bodies that have no teeth. I mean, Amazon was ruled to have illegally rigged the election in Bessemer, the first election. Nothing happened to them. It was just, all right, we're going to redo it. It's kind of like the oil companies that, like, once they, leak and poison waterways and communities, there's no criminal penalty. You just hit them with a fine, which they already baked into the cake on their balance sheet. So I wouldn't put it past Amazon being heavy-handed and threatening to close the warehouse, or laying off a ton of workers, or cutting hours for workers that were successful. And they could challenge this, but I mean, the workers won in a landslide. I could also see Amazon starting to basically put out false stories or Oppo research on Christian Smalls, this and that. I saw them doing that before the election, alluding to things, impropriety that they had no evidence for. But basically what Starbucks has done, which is firing workers, cutting hours, I would expect that, but significantly more.
Yeah. I feel like so far here, we have a couple of Starbucks locally that are going through the process. And the main one is in Hialeah that's the closest to having their vote on this. And the company has been surprisingly not horrible. And there have been a few points where they thought that they were going to come down into something, and they haven't. And I don't know why. I'm like, it's almost like they're waiting for the other shoe to drop at that location. But so far, it's not been met with that kind of, resistance. So I think
the biggest difference is that while Starbucks and the employees that are there, it is obviously important. I mean, everybody should be able to make a living wage. Yeah. The idea that this is even a discussion is absolutely insane.
The conditions are quite different, though.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the conditions are different, but we're only just over 40 years removed from when most people were able to make a living wage. This is not big of a stretch. It's not like it didn't happen. We're only 40 years removed from when New York and California had tuition-free public college, and everyone acts like, oh my God, college free? What the hell is that all about? So everyone has very short-term memories regarding things that will advance labor in the United States. But there is no question that Amazon is the biggest, most consequential company in the United States. And the fact that this happened is... I mean, everything runs through labor as far as we're concerned. And one thing I'd like you to talk about, Jordan, because Staten Island, and granted, a lot of the workers come from all different parts of New York City. Some probably even came from New Jersey. Staten Island is the reddest part of New York City. I'm willing to bet that not everybody who was part of this unionizing effort is a Democrat. I am sure that the political spectrum, if you could speak on that.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I mean, a lot of these workers, because I would be at the Union tent. I covered this for a year before these Johnny-come-latelys came in, pretending that they've been covering it for forever. A lot of these media outlets are pretending they covered this when they didn't. Anyway, the Union tent was right next to the bus stop, and I would see people getting off the bus. It's a lot of young people. it's a lot of, I would say, like 18 to 25 ish. Yeah, there's older workers too, but there's a lot of young people. Amazon plucks people, high school graduates who don't go to college, or untrained people who have been laid off elsewhere, and a lot of those people aren't even into politics. So that was one of the interesting things. They didn't know anything about what a union is. They didn't know anything about dues or things like that. Because they didn't know about unions and things like that, it made what Amazon was pushing, which is they're just trying to create a business and take money from your paycheck. It was effective, but Christian and these workers continually being out there every day, and after a while, handing out free food every day, which I saw workers online for that food. These are paycheck to paycheck workers. A free meal or two a day goes a long way. And the workers did tell me, the successful Amazon labor union, that there's people in there not into politics. There's people in there who voted for Trump. There's people in there that, are more Democrats. But all of them have the same grievances. The hours are insane. Amazon doesn't cover their transportation to get to work. Some of them travel 2-3 hours to get to work. Ferry, bus, subway. The insane tracking and management continually, speed it up, particularly during COVID. It was already insane before COVID, but it really became more of like a Hunger Games situation during COVID. It's not like a progressive movement thing. There were definitely different political shades and a lot of people who just aren't into politics at all.
And that is why we consider that labor is the unifying issue of our time. We constantly talk about it. The youth that are down here, Florida, unfortunately, as you, I'm sure, have experienced in your recent travels here, it's a very disorganized state, especially from a grassroots perspective. There is a little bit of a movement in the I-4 corridor, Tampa, Orlando area, but overall, it's not strong. But the one thing I can tell you about the youth down here, they are very much into the environment and they are very much into labor. So when you combine those two efforts together, there is a lot that can be done from that. And it has nothing to do with a political affiliation. It's very much driven by a cause, which I think is how we advance a lot of these things going forward. And as you mentioned, there were 50 known currently Amazon warehouses around the nation that have already expressed interest in following suit with what has happened in Staten Island. I think it's only a matter of time before we realize just how big this is going to blow up. Would you agree that while electoral politics is certainly important, especially for candidates who are running with no corporate special interest money, these outside movements, particularly with the environment and labor, is really the key to us getting where we need to go?
Absolutely. And I think, these are not the sexy topics that get like big clicks, but this is the actual work of organizing. The word organizing is used a lot. Well, it's the little things. I mean, they had that Christian was driving to and from New Jersey to Staten Island daily with a blue tent in his truck, in the back, handing out free food, having barbecues on holidays, with that food, cooking specific food for specific workers. There were West African workers, so African rice, rice food for Hispanic workers, and this. All it took, I don't say all it took was people that had nothing left to lose. And that pretty much is, 90% of the country at this point. So, not every warehouse will be successful. Different geography plays a part. How strong or weak unions those states are in terms of unionized percentage. But overall, I think if you can beat Jeff Bezos in a 15, the warehouse is the size of 15 football fields, 8,000 workers. If you could beat,
jeez,
yeah,
I thought.
if you could beat them there, why can't you beat them at smaller warehouses, this and that? So I do think other people should look at this as a galvanizing force, whether it be union drives, strikes, economic protests. We don't have to have a general strike tomorrow. You could start in your local community, whether it's a greedy, awful supermarket chain, corporate banking, this and that. And numbers matter. If you start getting numbers out there, yeah, let them fire you, but let them threaten to fire you or something like that. But it's now all interconnected. So if they retaliate against you, now you have Starbucks Workers United to support you, an Amazon labor union to support you. So I think people need to get on the ground more, not just going in circles protesting, but right outside these awful companies. And if you don't think trying to go to an established labor union would work, do what they did to here and start your own union at your, whatever it is, grocery store, fast food, because worker to worker contact is obviously really, really important factor in Christian and Amazon labor union success.
I think we would both agree that probably one of the biggest issues that is faced here in Florida, especially in a state like Alabama, is right to work laws.
We're right to work.
And having that in states, even in a state like Wisconsin, which is the Koch brothers' wet dream state.
Well, it's kind of like if you think of labor overall as being like having one of its nuts cut off years ago, Florida and any other right to work state takes the other one. So it's just, they're so neutered here. And they can't, they're very powerless here.
Yeah, and I think that will be, depending on where these other unionized attempts will happen. Hopefully there will be attempts here.
Oh, I hope so. But I always try to get people to understand that the way that people can support, anybody watching, if you're not in a business where you have the potential to be in union, but you want to support them, when you find out that something is going on, if you know you live near an Amazon distribution center or a Starbucks that's unionizing, show up. You can actually just go there and talk to people and hang out and just buy a Starbucks. We did it to help the one that's unionizing here, and it really makes a difference. And when the management sees just regular community people coming out and supporting the union, it's much harder for them to dismiss it. It is. So community support for labor is very important.
Right. Absolutely. And I also think, at the end of the day, we've seen the Alabama coal miners on strike now for nearly a year. So it is geographic. Obviously, Alabama, I think, has one of the lowest union percentages in the country. So they need support. The Amazon workers, go out there with them, draw media attention, build off of victories to help those who haven't been victorious yet. And it also, if you don't have a great chance in Florida of unionizing because of right to work, there's no reason people can't start boycotts against certain places. They can't fire you all. And if they try to fire you all and they bring in scabs, you make their life unpleasant. And I also think when we have victories like this, it creates more infrastructure for mutual aid. So if you can go on strike or boycott or walkouts, urge customers not to shop there, which Starbucks workers did that, boycott Starbucks for a week until they got their demands met. I think that could be done anywhere. And mutual aid networks, which I think are going to be popping up even more now because of Amazon workers' success, are a big way to support workers if they're on strike, boycotting, whatever it may be.
I think it goes without saying that even if there is going to be massive strike breaking and massive union busting, the movement is going to continue to evolve and grow bigger, where people are going to have their own network in their area, basically saying, you don't want to work for this company because they will kick you to the curb if you even think about trying to ask for a higher wage, healthcare, any of that stuff. And right now, it's just so ironic because it's so obvious that this really is the movement that's happening now. And yet, President Biden brings President Obama to the White House to talk about how great the ACA is and how this is what we need to be doing. No, actually, numbnuts, what you need to be talking about is how if we had universal health care, that would give even more leverage to labor. But of course, they want to leave that part out. They don't want to address the fact that having universal health care makes life infinitely easier for workers in circumstances like this. I can't even begin to imagine and listen, it gets very cold in Staten Island during the winter. So I can imagine how difficult it was for some people. I can imagine how sick some people got over the course of this period of time. And having their health care thrown out, it probably was immensely difficult. I still think there is a massive amount of tone deafness. We saw specifically more than anybody else how Jim Cramer reacted to the unionizing of this particular warehouse. How do you think the establishment media in particular, and especially with what obviously just happened with this whole let's really let's emphasize the ACA, like that's what we need right now. Can you just talk about the complete tone deafness on their part and how even in a moment like this, they're still beating a dead horse, and it's as if they just don't realize what they're doing is completely asinine.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't want to minimize. This is probably the biggest labor victory of this century. The lawyer who was helping these workers pro bono said this is the biggest labor victory since the 1930s sit-down strikes. So you would think the media, I mean, yeah, Russia and Ukraine is still going on, a couple other things, but you would think you'd get some more coverage, not just having Christian Smalls on, but maybe spotlighting other issues at other Amazon warehouses, maybe revisiting Jeff Bezos' mission to space and whether that was a great thing when all these things are happening at Amazon warehouses. Maybe digging a little deeper into that Amazon literally lied about the amount of COVID cases they had, including the deaths. But that hasn't been happening. It's basically been Jim Cramer, verbally farting out nonsense. Another CNBC journalist asked Christian, basically the first question was, when are you going to start cooperating with Amazon? CNN had kind of like a milquetoast interview with Christian. It wasn't so bad, but it was clear they were just doing it to check off the box and then not cover it anymore. And this for good reason. Amazon's a major sponsor. You see Amazon commercials on all of these cable news networks. Amazon sponsors political newsletters and whatnot. So, you don't expect much from the corporate media, but in a way, it's not a bad thing because Christian and them, even though there was a media blackout on it, aside, Vice did consistent coverage, credit to Vice and a very few others. It also, the media, it kept the media sharks away. I remember during Bernie's campaign would say, yeah, we don't like that we're getting a blackout, but it's actually in some ways good because less attacks from the media right now. So I think the media is going to continue trying to undercut this. They're not really covering Starbucks firing workers who were part of the union organizing, aside from More Perfect Union and a couple others. But I think at this point, you're going to probably see more local media attention than you will national.
Yeah. And that's fine. You know what? That's actually fine. Let them, it's almost like a sleeper, and I feel like that, especially about our Starbucks here in Hialeah, because Hialeah is a very, very red, very, it's a very Cuban area, and anything when you say union to them is socialism. Like, it's not a very popular thing. And the fact that they've been sort of going under the radar is possibly a good thing in that case. I mean, right. What do you think?
But I would also say, not that I'm, strategizing for them, but to me, I covered 2 or 3 protests that ALU did during the campaign outside Jeff Bezos's, variety of penthouse suites and mansions and this and that. Didn't get media attention then. It might now, and you might have bigger numbers out there. In the past, they had 30, 40 protesters. You might get 100, 200 now and get more media attention, drawing to the fact this man is obscenely rich. He's not paying a living wage. New York City, $15 minimum wage is peanuts. So they could redeploy some of the tactics that they did that wasn't getting media attention now that the media is kind of forced to cover it, protesting outside Bezos's homes, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Question from good friend Christina Stewart, activist in the Orlando area. Jordan, will you be at the march in D.C. on June 18th?
Which march?
I was going to say the same thing.
I think it's the Poor People's March, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. If I'm not there, we'll have a camera out there for sure.
Cool.
That sounds fun. There you go, Christina.
So I don't want to be
late. Friday, by the way, is another Amazon workers that were just successful are having their second press conference. So I'll be there on Friday. I think it starts at 4:30 Eastern. So you can.
And where will this be?
right outside the warehouse in Staten Island.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, Poor People's Campaign.
All right.
Yeah.
So I don't want to belabor this point because obviously everybody wants to talk about it for clickbait reasons, but I want to hear from you specifically about what AOC did or did not do regarding coming in at the last minute to actually assist in this effort. My understanding is that she was supposed to be there, was supposed to lend support, and she never did until after it had already been decided that they had won. This is just a long time coming because I think a lot of people have been getting frustrated with her over the past year plus. And this was just a moment where she really fumbled the ball. Crystal Ball, to her credit, really called her out in a way that really got under her skin. And you know what? You're an elected official, but you're not just any elected official. You're somebody who's supposed to be like one of the true leaders of the non-corporate
This is worthy
movement.
of criticism.
Yeah. And so the fact that she couldn't even take that criticism about the fact that she dropped the ball here, it's not to belabor the point. It's more or less, look, she clearly made a mistake. Where did she make that mistake? And how can she rectify it going forward?
Oh, boy. First of all, I went to their first press conference over the summer, and they were advertising AOC was speaking there, which is obviously, if you're trying to get press attention, a big deal. And AOC people the night before canceled, said citing security concerns. I don't want to poo-poo security concerns. I know she gets a lot of death threats. So even if you wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt on that, I think the problem was, as workers told me on Friday after their victory, it was radio silence after that. Christian, others reached out to AOC's people, wasn't getting responses, even asking them, can you tweet out the link to our website? Can you tweet out, when we're protesting outside Bezos has mentioned, like, not heavy lifting here, nothing. So that is, you could cite security concerns or scheduling conflicts. There's not much you could say that's credible in terms of why you wouldn't use your digital army, 13 million followers,
Right.
just to boost this group. Also, she did go out to Buffalo for the Starbucks workers there before they were successful. She should have. She went to Columbia for the student strikes there. Neither of those are in her district because that's one of the reasons. So it seems to me, I don't know why this one she wouldn't. Maybe it was just political calculation. They're going to lose, so why bother? But yeah, I think it's pretty sad commentary on her. It's fine to be happy about it now, but that's Johnny come lately politics. We elected you. People knocked on doors for you. People made phone calls for you. People gave money for you because you depicted yourself that you would be out there with the grassroots when it counts, win, lose, or draw. So obviously they were successful without her. And it's also, by the way, yeah, she's getting the grief and she should. Jamal Bowman didn't do anything. He's a New York congressman. Mondaire Jones didn't do anything. He's a New York congressman. Naturally, Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand didn't do anything, but now they're tweeting. So it was pretty much silence of the political lambs. And it's a testament to Christian and the organizers that they were successful, but they could have won by even more. Let me tell you, a lot of those people who are in that warehouse who aren't really into politics, they know AOC. So if AOC would have tweeted something, if AOC would have done a TikTok, things like that, that could have helped them win by an even larger margin. So yeah, I think it's a big L on her part. I've never got into Fraud Squad or this and that, but I don't really understand who's advising her these days because, one of her tweets in response to this was, we've called for hearings of oversight, this and that. That's great, but that's politics. And that's not going to get that far because we live in the United Corporations of America. So the things that she is stating make me think she thinks it's more effective trying things like calling for hearings and things like that. You should be doing both, not doing this. So I don't really understand there is no credible reason why she wasn't at least posting on social media in support.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Well, that bothered me, but actually what bothered me even more was her response to Crystal. And had she not responded that way, I don't think I would have been as annoyed about the whole thing. But basically, for anyone who doesn't know, Crystal made some comment along the lines of, yeah, Johnny come lately. Thanks. Welcome to the party. Where have you been? They couldn't count on you. And Alex's response was that warehouse is not in her district. See, that is the problem. That to me speaks volumes. That is up there with the present vote. That is her just completely not having any responsibility for anything. Because I'm sorry, a lot of the people in that warehouse live in her district. So whether or not that district is, or warehouse is in her district, is irrelevant. And the fact that that was her response, that pissed me off even more. Just saying.
And it doesn't make sense. Buffalo is far from her district.
Exactly.
She went there. So yeah.
How much of an impact do you think Pelosi and you have others like the gentleman who's trying to become the next speaker, who's based in New York? His name
I wouldn't call him a gentleman, but yeah.
Yeah,
Hakeem Jeffries.
Hakeem Jeffries. How much of a role do you think the Democratic Party as an infrastructural, party as it stands right now plays a role in whether or not any of these representatives kind of step out of line? Because the truth is, even in the Democratic Party, in terms of the progressive movement, there's probably only about 15 representatives, maybe 20 at most, that are not taking corporate special interest money. And then you have another 200 plus that are. So, and a lot of them take money from Amazon. So I'm thinking there is definitely a conflict of interest here in terms of, don't make a big deal about this. You're going to hurt our party's chances in the midterms. You're going to make us look bad, blah, 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 blah. And I have to hear that every day.
It's worse than that. You wonder why Pelosi's quiet? Look at her stock portfolio. Her husband and her have purchased, I think, $3 to $4 million in Amazon stocks and made nearly 30 million between Amazon, Facebook, and other tech platforms. So they don't want to cheerlead this because it hurts their bottom line if Amazon gets unionized. There's also the factor of, politicians, some of them give like the checkbox, like let me tweet out rah rah. But I think it's also kind of like they don't want to go too far with actually doing anything more than a tweet, because wait a minute, if we could unionize at Amazon, then politicians actually doing anything. What they should be doing is taking this victory and doubling down on the PRO Act, and Biden through some means, standalone bill or something like that, at least bringing it to the floor, pushing it in the Senate. They're not going to do that because I think just like the student loan cancellation, they know politically that is a winner that could actually save them in the midterms, but they don't want to do it because if you start canceling student debt, then these organizers who would have successfully got that done, then they move to free public college. Then they move to, wait, if we could do this, why can't we do Medicare for all? They don't want to give victories even to the people, even if it would be politically beneficial for them, because safeguarding the system of corruption is more important.
Yeah, that's something actually that brings me back to the union thing, because there are definitely unions that don't support Medicare for all. And this to me is bizarre. And I really have a hard time with that. There's like this, it's a cognitive dissonance thing for me, but it really goes to the difference between union leadership and rank and file and what's in whose best interest, because I can't think of any universe wherein all workers would not benefit from Medicare for all. Like that's just, not a real point.
Well, it all comes back to the difference between bosses and delegates versus the rank and file. And the best example of that was when Jen ran for Congress and the head of the Broward County AFL-CIO, Dan Reynolds, broke charter to prevent her from even getting a screening, much less even allowing the rank and file to vote on an endorsement versus her or Wasserman Schultz. And so I look at it from two perspectives. One, he knows that she's much more dangerous than Canova was in terms of her ability to appeal to the average voter. And then you add in the factor of there's just systemic corruption within unions. It's not a question of labor being corrupt. Labor is not corrupt. It's very just. But union power, Randy Weingarten, the head of the teachers union, and we had a guest on last week, James Wright? Zachary Wright. We had a guest on who specifically said, and it kind of all crystallizes that the teachers union fights for teachers,
not for students.
They do not fight for students.
That's their job. Quite honestly, that's their job. They're the teachers union. Like that's their job. The problem is when the people that are in charge of the union are not looking out for their own people. That's the problem. And you see that with any union that doesn't support single payer healthcare, and which there's like a couple of them that don't support single payer.
Well, and again, as you saw during the 2016 primary, which is, again, somebody should really do a case study on that particular election, not just from the corruption standpoint, but the fact that every single labor union that allowed the rank and file to vote on endorsement voted for Bernie. And anytime they only allowed the board to vote, it went to Hillary. I mean, if that's not as clear as day where the country really is, I don't know what is.
Right. Absolutely. And, at the end of the day, a lot of these union heads have been there for like 20, 30, 40 years. They have Randy Weingarten is like tight with Hillary Clinton and other Democratic bourgeoisie in the Democratic leadership. They're intentionally disconnected from the work and file, particularly the young people, the younger generation, which is making up a lot of this union organizing. So that's why I think, it's not going to be applicable in all situations, but that's why I think what ALU did could be a model for others of not even really going through like established unions and just doing it yourself, because an established union has come in twice in Alabama, and twice it looks like they're going to be lose again in the second election. So, in some cases, that established union could boost your efforts, but I think in most cases, they're outsiders and they have an older view and an outdated view on how to organize in this digital TikTok younger generation. So, and yeah, a lot of them are corrupt, as you said, Peter. I've seen that traveling around the country. So, yeah, I definitely think, and also a lot of these established unions told Christian Smalls he was wasting his time doing it on his own. And now they came in at the last minute to kind of, try to get them to merge with those unions.
I think it's very case by case dependent, like what's the best course of action for any organization. For Amazon, they're so big that they really ought to be their own union. Like, just as a matter of being able to have the right oversight and the right control and actually have it be worker led, the fact that they have enough people that they can do that to me would be always the preference. I think it really is when places don't have that kind of infrastructure, they don't have that capability. And like, for example, a single Starbucks location in and of itself, like what would they do? So I mean, they need, some of them just need something backing them up.
And that really is the problem in many ways with the AFL-CIO, because as we just stated with what happens with Dan Reynolds, there were multiple union leaders of different unions who wanted to endorse her. But because of the fact that they are under the umbrella of the AFL-CIO,
Correct.
They didn't have the authority to do it.
Right.
And so that's where the corruption really rears its head. And Dan Reynolds has been in the union for probably 40 plus years. The guy's pushing 70, he may be over 70, and comes from just sort of that old school mindset of I'm the boss, like anything else, and I have my partner in crime, if you will. But the fact that you have representatives that are anti-labor, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is anti-labor. There's no getting around that. And so when you have that type of complete disregard and disrespect of labor, I agree with you. A lot of these companies should be doing that. Now, the question becomes, we see what Amazon is doing, and we see what Starbucks is doing. Is anybody trying to do this with Walmart yet, based on the information that you've gathered to this point?
Not yet, because Walmart in the past has simply just fired workers while they're trying to unionize. But that would be amazing, and I would not rule that out. That Walmart workers might see this and start, talking amongst themselves about trying to unionize. Maybe starting in New York, since New York was successful in terms of Amazon.
Yeah. I mean, we know it like certain businesses, specifically, let's say McDonald's, when they hire somebody with their employment packet, they give them the application for government aid, for subsidies, for food stamps. They give them that with their employment package. That to me is absolutely unacceptable. Like, that is not something you give to somebody who's getting a job. And the fact that there's multiple companies that do that and that's just acceptable is outrageous. Like, and nobody talks about this. It's
right,
very frustrating.
But it also goes to our captured government, which, I mean, there hasn't been like an update on labor law that actually has teeth since the New Deal. I mean, it's just been a machete to all protections that FDR and the New Deal put in. And this PRO Act I mean, it passed the House, but they do things symbolically in the House, passing it to say, hey, we did it, when they know it's not going anywhere in the Senate, and they know Biden's not going to fight for it. I mean, Biden is the fakest pro-union guy out there. He pushed NAFTA. He's taken God knows how much money from union busting companies. So, not having something like the PRO Act or something equivalent to actually put criminal penalties on these corporations makes it difficult, because Amazon, they'll take fines. We'll redo the election because you ruled we rigged it the first time. We'll just be a little bit more subtle to try and rig it the second time. So that's why it's going to take people power. That's why it's going to take people power and organizers and being out there every day. I have literally for years been saying, hey, we do great protests for one day and then everybody goes home, So, for example, with the student loan debt, they just did a great protest outside the Department of Education. The same day Biden extended again the moratorium on repayment. Hey, how about you get out there every day? I know it's hard. I know people are working paycheck to paycheck. But if you have a core group out there every day getting louder and louder and getting more people out there demanding cancellation, then you move it in front of the White House. Media has to cover it. So I think we need longer lasting, not just, Christian Smalls and workers being out there in front of the warehouse for a year, but protests for the climate, student loans, et cetera, et cetera.
And if there is a mutual aid group, because I got to be honest, we have some money that, and again, we don't take a salary. Any money that comes in for the podcast always goes out to any type of efforts that are non-corporate related. Obviously, mutual aid would be great. So if there are any organizations that you would recommend that you think would be worth it, I think what you're bringing up right now is obviously a very solid point and will definitely have a lot of benefit for people who are afraid to spend money because they don't exactly know where it's going. But if there are organizations that are legit, like if Christian Smalls said, give money to this organization, they're trustworthy.
Yeah,
I would give money.
Well, and that was something that I want to talk with him about, is because we have a facility here in Pembroke Park, right?
We do.
Okay, and so my thought is, and Florida is definitely the Florida, but yeah, but if there were anything that was going to be stirring up down there, that is the kind of place where I would totally be happy for us to sponsor some sort of like aid situation and get
We'd be
food
happy
to people.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
So I mean, that's why it's so important for communities to participate in this, because workers cannot do it without like support.
Right.
They can't just not work, because that's the problem, is you need to have enough aid and community network in place to sustain any real movement. And that's something they did by being out there every day for a year.
I do want to, and guys, if you can support patreon.com/generational change, we support mutual aid programs. We support non-corporate initiatives like the attempts to form a union with 2 of our Starbucks in Miami-Dade County as we speak. Any non-corporate candidates, we always check, let everybody know.
Community garden, homeless care packs,
ocean beach cleanup. So that's what we do. So if you guys are
random acts of kindness throughout,
so that's what we're about,
and spread love.
So if you like what we're doing, please support. Jordan, I think a good place to wind down the conversation. Obviously, I got to tell you, I think Biden's decision to have Obama at the White House yesterday is going to be a political disaster that they can't even see coming. It is at such a level. First of all, the way that everyone looked at Obama like he was the president is so bad for optics. And the way that Kamala is so out of place, how she has no idea what she's doing. And Joe, more and more by the day, this was one of those, the Democratic establishment is literally going to rig an election away from Bernie Sanders to make sure that they can literally just put a figurehead in as president of the United States. And that is what they have done. And I don't really have much sympathy for Biden, but after what I just saw, I have sympathy for him, and I have sympathy for people that are fighting on the side of labor right now who know what's coming in November, because this is going to be really bad. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, in large part, it's not just Clyburn, but he won South Carolina by, hugging Barack Obama for dear life. Joe Biden during the primary. He was putting out like best friends forever bracelets with Obama on Twitter. So yeah, I don't want to say that's the reason he won. There was a lot of other terrible things and rigging, but basically attaching himself to Obama and just getting Obama nostalgia, particularly among black voters, it played a large part in him being able to survive the primaries. And I think not just him, but the Democratic Party keeps wheeling out Obama even before Biden became president, because they have nothing else. They have nothing else. They're not providing any economic relief. They're not meeting the moment as far as COVID, the minimum wage, healthcare. So they bring out Obama because he's a legendary bullshit artist that has a high approval rating. But hey, Trump won in 2016, and Hillary brought out Obama several times. So I think he's popular, but not with disaffected voters, not with the largest voting group in America, which is non-voters. Latinos are actually, it's unthinkable, moving a little bit more towards the right. And they moved further away from Democrats this last general election. So, I think they could keep bringing Obama out, but Obama, that was 5 or 6 years ago he left office. So I just don't think it's very effective. I don't really know what the point was. Biden signed an executive action, but it doesn't do that much. What's that?
I think it doesn't really do anything. And not only that, but
no, it stirs the Republicans even more. It does that.
That's what I was just going to say. I mean, if there was anything that I would take away from what happened yesterday, you just gave the Republicans a political football that they didn't need. Like, this was too easy.
What was the order? What was the order?
Well, it was basically it was like a slight expansion on the ACA to like 5 million families. You've got 100 million people in this country who have little to no health care. This is not a joke. And the fact that you've got the Democratic Party hacks that are cheering this on like he did something significant. It's so bad. And people are just getting restless at this point. But I got to tell you, I didn't get the impression that Obama really had that big of an impact the other day. I think he has an impact with the true blue lifers. I think that's still there. But in terms of the voter who's not sure, I think people are sick of Obama at this point. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. And I think at the end of the day, he keeps pushing out these messages like change happens slowly and gradually. Let's not let perfect not be the enemy of the good. I mean, he's basically catchphrases for incrementalism, which is very different than, 2007, 2008 and what he ran on. So I think for the actual magnitude of the problems right now, I think his message of, just wait, this is how the system is. It might work for people, older voters that are already going to come out for Biden and the Democrats. It ain't working for the young people. It ain't working. I think Biden is going to really have a problem with black voters and less black voters coming out. I think he thinks just checking boxes, first Supreme Court justice being a black woman. Again, that is really reaching your voters that are already coming out for you. But I don't know about, new voters or even voters that worked really hard to elect Biden just to get rid of Trump. I think there's going to be drop off.
And they have, and listen, I'm not a fan of it, but I do think that if we were able to move the Supreme Court back to a 5-4 vote, that would be a huge thing. And they do have a political football to run with right now regarding Clarence Thomas's wife. She definitely has scandal written all over her, and probably there is a potential cause for impeachment here with a sitting Supreme Court justice. Now, obviously, that would be a whale of a task, but the fact that they're not even attempting to rile the base of the normie moderate voters, which they easily could with this does not involve changing the economy in any way, and they won't even do that, really speaks to just what an absolute catastrophe this administration has been, and it was all about stopping Bernie. Last thing, what can you tell us about what you learned in your travels to Florida this past week?
Well, yeah, and I wanted to say I'm very glad you got to meet with Anna Eskamani. She's definitely like a favorite.
She's the best. Sure. She's the best we got in Florida right now, and that's not not saying anything good. She actually is good.
Yeah.
But Florida, unfortunately, is very slim pickings, but she definitely stands out. And frankly, if you're going to run a statewide race, Orlando is the best possible place in the state you could be.
Which is, then you think Escamani 26.
Yeah.
Right. What did I learn? COVID is not a thing in Florida.
No.
I learned that. I learned that essentially the media from the local outlets I saw is horrible. They don't seem to be covering the most important story, which is the affordable housing crisis, the climate inferno. They do seem very seduced by the Don't Say Gay bill, by the Stop Woke Act, and these other distractions, which are harming real people. And I think that's part of the purpose is DeSantis, in addition to his 2024 national ambitions, it's to distract the masses from the machete he is taking to Florida's economy, that he's not doing anything on property taxes, affordable housing, the climate, transportation. So let's just rally the base, ignite the base of bigots and people against, the discussion of sexual identity in schools, which isn't even happening, or critical race theory, which isn't even happening. And I think a lot of progressives, and I saw it in comments to my videos, wrongly feel like, oh, these culture wars are distractions. Why are you covering it? Because there's LGBTQ high school students who are suicidal. That's why I'm covering it.
That's true.
And I spoke with some that are, they say all my friends are on antidepressants, suicidal. Some of them are homeless that I spoke to because their parents don't accept them. And now the one place that they did feel like they could be themselves was school. Now they're anxious about what can they say, what can't they say. They don't want to say things that might get their family in trouble, or might get them in trouble, or might allow one of these Republican mommies to sue the school district because Johnny came into school and talked about the weekend picnic with his two dads. I mean, it's ridiculous. And these things are spreading like lightning fire. There's anti-LGBTQ legislation everywhere in Texas. Texas is basically trying to arrest parents with transgender kids. Now Tennessee is trying to legalize child marriage. I mean, it's really, this goes back to the Democratic Party. I mean, this should be a layup to defeat these crazy lunatic bigoted Republicans. But when you're not offering any alternative economically, people sit it out, but the Republican base doesn't sit it out. They get further galvanized. So I would say Florida, a lot of people might not know, was ground zero for the 2008-2009 crash. It was foreclosure city. A lot of Floridians have never come back from that. Then you add COVID, which Florida was also ground zero for a while. Because of Ron DeSantis and, the free state of Florida. And now you have all these kind of colliding cultural issues that are totally unnecessary, are meant to target certain communities, and are basically trying to cover up the real problem, which is the economic Hunger Games.
Yeah.
And we've got plenty. And
they don't want to address the climate here either. They're not addressing the climate here.
Or the fact that under the cover of night, they passed an anti-solar bill on behalf of FPL. Three Republican state senators refused to vote for it, especially because apparently FPL is very unpopular in the panhandle of all places, the reddest part of the state in many ways. And it took 3 Democratic senators to make sure that it did pass. And so that, to me, is as big, if not bigger, than the Don't Say Gay bill, because this affects everybody.
Did you know about the solar bill, Jordan?
Yeah. Okay. I interviewed you two about it.
Yeah. And so ultimately it goes without saying that this is why the culture wars are a big deal, because they're constantly thrown at us to distract from the economic and environmental and healthcare hardships that everyday people face. So just throw a wedge issue in everybody's face, and that's all anybody will end up talking about. And people that have way too much time and privilege on their hands are able to make that their central focus. And at the time where we really need to be focusing on things like what just happened with Amazon, it really is on us, on what we do in independent media to make sure that there is a bright light cast on these issues that are affecting everyday people. Because otherwise, we are going to end up with a President DeSantis in 24. But with that said, do you see Biden running again? And if he does, do you see him being primaried? Or do you not see him running and you see him having a wide open field? What are your thoughts? Final thought.
I think if he's healthy enough, which I don't know if he's the right judge on whether he's healthy, because if you see him talk, it's not pretty most of the time. I think he'll run again. I think they know if he didn't run again, Kamala Harris is a disaster politically. I don't even think a lot of neoliberal voters like her that much because she just doesn't have any pizzazz. At least Biden can kind of bullshit that he's like a populist guy. Kamala Harris just is kind of stale and robotic. I do think he'll be primaried. I don't know who it would be. Could be a Marianne Williamson. It could be a Nina Turner if she is successful in this latest congressional run, which I hope she'll be successful in. Could be somebody we haven't even thought of that's not even in Congress right now. So I do think he'll be primaried, whether he runs or not. I think Harris, it would be a little trickier to primary because the identity politics would come out. You're trying to primary possibly the first female Black president. So I think Biden definitely would be primaried.
I tell you, they've been talking about it from the beginning that they're going to, after the midterms, they're going to try to find some way to kind of usher her into the White House.
It's not going to work,
I'm
people.
telling you,
It's just not going to work.
It will be such a, if the first Madam President gets in that way, it will be such a disaster.
She can't win, though. She couldn't even win a primary. How could she win?
But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying if you make the first Madam President somebody who literally was manufactured without a single vote, history is not going to be kind. It will be very, very bad.
And by the way, I would not rule out Mark Cuban, one of these, billionaires who kind of have a decent public image. He just started his own lower cost prescription drug company.
Yeah.
I don't have any intel on that, but I wouldn't rule it out because frankly,
he would certainly have juice. There's no question. Marianne Williamson would have juice, and of course, Nina Turner would have juice. So I do think there are some possibilities there. Jordan, anything you're working on before you go, you want to let everybody know about?
Everybody needs to subscribe to Status Coup.
Go to Status Coup. It's heavily suppressed, like us. But Jordan is doing real journalism, and I emphasize the word real. So anything you want to plug before you go?
Yeah, we've been doing a new series. It's called The Economic Hunger Games. We might switch it to Status Screwed. We're playing around with that. But as of now, it's the Economic Hunger Games. And I've basically been doing something very radical, just interviewing living, breathing, working people on this booming economy, which includes seniors on the verge of suicide because their rent went up $800, seniors rationing rice and beans, young people getting letters in the mail that they owe the government $9,000, even though the government all along told them they were good. This was a young man who was on disability for muscular dystrophy and kept on checking with the Indiana Department of whatever and kept on being told, no, you don't owe anything. And now got a letter for $9,000 that is literally, he might not be able to pay the rent. I just interviewed somebody today about how work from home is considered good, but he's now thousands of dollars in debt because in his area, the Wi-Fi isn't strong enough. So he's had to pay for private Wi-Fi, which is very expensive. These stories are not sexy, but they kind of show the total joke that is the historic economic recovery. So I've been doing interviews, during the week with people that are suffering economically, never recovered from COVID and things like that. So if you have a story, you could reach us at info@statuscoup.com, info@statuscoup.com. Would love to interview you. And support us if you can. We do on the ground reporting. We're one of the only independent outlets that do on the ground reporting. It's not cheap. You could join us as a member for $5 to $10 a month. Statuscoup.com/join.
Statuscoup.com/join. I still think, this is my opinion, I know we've had discussions.
You just go to statuscoup.com and then just join. Yeah. It's probably very user friendly. There's probably a big button that says donate or join, right?
Yeah.
I still think you need to go on some of the bigger conservative platforms just so that message of what you're doing can get out there. Whether it is
especially since for labor.
Yeah. Michael Knowles has approached Jen about having her on, but Jen's been on Tim Pool. Some of the others have expressed interest. So as far as I'm concerned, It's not about going on there and having an argument about, this is my ideology or whatever. It's about, this is what everyday people are suffering through. And when hundreds of thousands of more people who would never even think to turn on status quo hear that message, you're not going to get all of them, but you're going to get a chunk of them who are going to be like, you know what, this actually does matter, and I think we need to do something about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the kind of work you do definitely would appeal to just any working people, regardless of political affiliation. And I think so, especially when I see you standing outside of Amazon talking to people. That is the kind of stuff that most people can relate to. Like, I think.
That is the kind of stuff YouTube doesn't want to show. So,
So let's change that. Jordan Chariton, Status Quo News.
Jordan.
Always a pleasure, brother.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
See you.
Bye. All right, before we bring in Spencer, I got to smoke a bowl.
Oh, well, by all means.
I can't do that in front of a new guest.
Can't do that in front of a new guest? Well, I think he's fighting for legalization. And considering the fact that they passed it in the House again, but we all know it's going to hit a brick wall, whether it's with the Senate, of course, oh, come on, man. You can't pass weed. Oh, man. Speaking of mutual aid, he is running for the U.S. Senate in the Show Me state of Missouri. So show me your mutual aid.
I've never been to Missouri.
Neither I have. Technically, I flew into St. Louis, so that does count. I did drive on I-55.
No, that doesn't count. You flew into the airport.
Yeah. I drove by the arch. I saw the arch. I didn't go to it, but it's a start.
I've never been.
Well, we're going to hear a lot about it now. Spencer Toder, welcome to Generational Change.
Hey, thanks so much. And I apologize, I don't have a brick background. You guys all have brick backgrounds. I didn't know that was part of the deal.
This is an illusion and actually won't be here for much longer. We're working on our permanent backdrop. But so we were at first told, I approached, you know what? I would totally share it for people. My goal is actually for our 420 episode to have an in-studio
420 live stream.
We're doing a special 420 at 4.
Bring me back. I'll be back for that.
Are you a partaker?
I will be in Evolution magazine as the first U.S. Senate candidate to come out as someone who both participates in smoking marijuana and fully supports the federalization and legalization at a federal level of marijuana. So yes.
Well, either way, definitely tune in. We already have a slate lined up. Nevertheless, it's going to be a big deal. We
were approached. I don't forget who the middle person was that approached us on your behalf. We got a message that I guess we had retweeted something from the person who you're running against in the primary, and basically telling us that you are a non-corporate candidate, you were in that race. And of course, we will platform any non-corporate candidate, but talk a little bit about your race. And we want to know, like, there's another progressive in the race. So what's that about? And where do you see yourself as something different than what he's offering?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think for starters, it's important when people say that they're a grassroots candidate to realize that there's grassroots and that you have support from a lot of people locally, and there's grassroots and that you have a really good online fundraising campaign from the coasts. And those are two very different things. And so my grassroots campaign is that we're making an impact at the ground level with thousands and thousands of Missourians every single day. And we're turning this into action. So I don't believe that in a campaign where people are saying I have to raise $50 to $70 million, that I should be spending that all on Facebook advertisements and email campaigns saying chip in $3, it's the end of the quarter. I think that we should be changing people's lives. So my campaign has been reaching out directly to people that we know are likely impoverished, people who likely are living in poverty, and letting them know that Medicaid expansion took place and they qualify for health insurance. So last week alone, we got 52 people signed up for Medicaid. And these are 52 people who will be advocates for this campaign, and 52 people whose trust that we earned by making their lives better. And ultimately, that's the role of a senator. It's supposed to be appropriating funds to make people's lives better. So we've done this time after time. We raised $50,000 for Afghan refugees and filled 2 storage containers full of supplies on their behalf. We fed 200 hot meals to military veterans who were unhoused on Thanksgiving. We worked with Kevin Strickland, a formerly incarcerated man who was innocent. After 43 years, he was released, but we held the rally the weekend before his hearing and brought 7 people from the National Organization for Exonerees in to speak on his behalf. So those are the kinds of actions we're taking on a different level, because I don't think that the way campaigning has been done in the past makes any sense. I think you can only advertise to earn so many votes. But if you actually want to earn those votes, you make people's lives better. You impact them on a daily basis, and you show them what you're going to do when you're in office.
Yeah, that's what we did. That's exactly what we did. I said when we first started this campaign that if we run this and lose, which we likely will because we're realists, then I will have spent 18 months selling myself. If I spend the next 18 months doing community service, then regardless of what happens, it was productive, right? Like, and it lends itself to continuing even after your election is over. Like, to me, win or lose, you're right. That's the job. The job is serving the community. And that is something that they focus so heavily on what they do in DC so much that they're not focusing on the other half of their job, which is actually being at home and serving in the community. And I think that's key.
Thank you. And honestly, how many policies do they actually pass that benefit us on a regular basis? If you look at where time is spent, I mean, in the state of Missouri, we've passed one bill through the House and Senate. One. And it's disgraceful. I mean, this is our tax dollars going to fund our attorney generals suing our school districts to keep masks off of children in schools for the last year during a pandemic, and to make it harder for people to live their lives to the fullest. And so when I go across the state, whether I'm in urban St. Louis, whether I'm in the counties or around the cities, or whether I'm in rural Missouri, people have the same values and they want the same things. They want better quality education for their kids. They want to make sure that everyone has access to healthcare without going into debt. They want good paying jobs. They want to take care of Mother Nature and our earth. And they want the government to get the hell out of the way. And we're so sick. I mean, I heard your previous piece, and I appreciated everything you said about the culture wars. You know, I call Republican politicians the most dangerous magicians of all times, because in their left hand, they're tantalizing us with these culture war issues that they've made up out of thin air. And in their right hand, they're taking away voting rights. And we have an incredible opportunity in Missouri this time around, because Roy Blunt is stepping down. And our likely competitor is our former disgraced governor, Eric Greitens. And I don't know if you're familiar with Eric Greitens, but this is a man who was accused, and it should be believed based on the testimonials, that he orally raped a woman. This is not me speaking tongue in cheek. This is not hyperbole. He is not a good human being, and he is likely the Republican challenger. So we have this incredible opportunity to make change right now by earning trust from people in the community and going out and showing them that we can have a government that actually represents us. And in the process, we can get rid of the filibuster, we can rebalance the courts, we can pass voting rights legislation, and then all of a sudden, nature will start to heal. We'll be able to pass legislation again. We won't need 60 votes to get things done. And I'll be the 50th vote right there every single day, checking the box to say, yeah, let's do this. Let's pass this legislation that the vast majority of Americans are pushing for every single day, but that Washington never seems to answer to give us.
Yeah.
Speaking with Spencer Toder, who's running for the U.S. Senate in Missouri, where in the state are you? Because again, when you're running for Congress, you know exactly where the person is located.
Yes, where are you, Spencer?
Yeah, so you flew into an airport not 10 minutes from my house. So I appreciate you for stopping by St. Louis area. I live in St. Louis County. I've lived here my entire life. I went to school in town at Washington University in St. Louis, and I've never left.
Blah, 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 blah. I was rejected. So I must reject you on my rejection from your university.
Your top competitor, Northwestern.
No.
They would like to be called our top competitor, but that is a very nice accolade.
I was just like, I was a reject from Washington University. I was rejected from two places there and UNC Chapel Hill. Big. Yeah.
Well, we would have loved to have had you, and it was our loss. So thank you for somehow making it, despite the fact you didn't get the education at WashU. St. Louis would have been graced with your presence.
I wanted to be there. I really did.
It was a great experience. So I've been here my whole life, but I spend most of my time throughout the state. I mean, my family has a farm in Franklin County, a rural portion of the state, and I spend weekends out there and have for the last 15-ish years. And this weekend I'll be in Springfield. Last weekend I was in Kansas City, and I was at Truman State in Kirksville. We're making the rounds. We're making sure that people know that their voice deserves to be heard, and then we're taking what they say and turning it into action.
Well, if there's one thing we can learn from your Congresswoman is that if Cori Bush can do what she did, anything is possible. because that was a political dynasty that she literally took down. And Missouri, it's a very interesting state because it's one part heartland, it's one part Midwest. So it's got a lot of those elements of economic populism. It's a state that was very popular with Harry Truman way back in the day. So there is an interesting history here. What have you learned from meeting with the voters all over the state? Obviously, there is a huge difference in terms of obviously the more progressive city, of course, is Kansas City, but there's a lot of populism in the state. So how would you say that is reflective in what you're trying to do? Because I do think that one thing that was very distinct between the last Senate election between Claire McCaskill and Josh Hawley is that McCaskill really leaned hard into establishment politics and Hawley leaned really hard into populism, and it proved to be a winner. So what have you experienced from just meeting with all different types of voters? Because it is a very unique state in a lot of different ways.
Sure. I mean, I appreciate the question. And I think ultimately, if you start by recognizing that populism is mostly an element of focusing on the working class and on individualists, what we found across the state is that most people feel left behind. I mean, Missouri is, in fact, a flyover state. You made that fairly clear in your intro, to be honest, and it's true. And it's not for lack of talent and intellect and hardworking people and quality individuals. It's really because a lot of people don't want to live here because it's an incredibly closed-minded place at times that doesn't feel as open and welcoming to minority communities and to LGBTQ communities and to folks who deserve a proper place here. And so we see what universities call brain drain, but it's really the exporting of intellectual people and of educated people who want to get out of here to find places where they feel more part of society. And so in rural Missouri and in parts of suburban Missouri, you see places where people come out and they say, the government just doesn't work. And they can point to that. They see the potholes in their road that have never been fixed. And when populists in their current form, which I would say, Josh Hawley played into that. Josh Hawley's main goal was to give people a common enemy. And at a time where people felt like they were left behind, he blamed other people for that. And he blamed people who looked differently for that. And so populism in Missouri has taken a very different direction. And I would say that most people in Missouri, in the rural areas, just don't believe the government works. Now, people in urban Missouri also don't believe government works for them, but they see it working in general. And so what we need to be doing is getting out into all communities and showing them that there are people who actually care, and we can lead with empathy, and that we don't have to leave people behind along the way. But when we've got Republican politicians going around saying the house is on fire, and they've literally got the gasoline in one hand and the matches in the other, and you could see that they're tearing apart the social fabric of the governmental systems that protect us, you realize what is actually happening. And there's a lack of democratic voices in our state, particularly because of the way we are naturally gerrymandered. I mean, if you look at our map, you've got Kansas City as a very big blue dot, and you've got St. Louis as a big blue dot, you've got Columbia, you've got some other places along the way. But ultimately, and that's a great comment that you got below, ultimately it's wealthy versus poor. And that's really what it ends up coming down to. And so real populism is looking out for people who have been left behind. And that's the focus of my campaign. I don't pay lip service and I don't spend all of my time fundraising. I spend my time in the most marginalized communities, making sure people know that there's someone who will listen to them. Yeah. So I think that's what the government's job should be.
Right? That's the whole point of having a representative. And by the way, people, they're your employees. I fully don't understand people grasp this concept. They actually look up to them and put them on these pedestals. I'm like, they work for you. The fact that they have better healthcare is the lunacy of it all, but they actually work for you. I really appreciate what you're doing on a statewide level. What does the field look like in your primary? Like what do you have in that race? You're saying it's an open seat, yes?
Yeah, so it's an open seat. It's likely going to be Eric Greitens on the other side, though it could be Vicky Hartzler, who was named the most anti-LGBTQ candidate in the Congress. But it's likely going to be Eric Greitens. On my side, there are two candidates who are my largest challengers at this point. Lucas Kuntz, who's the individual you spoke about earlier. Lucas has had tremendous success fundraising from the coasts. But he hasn't been doing nearly the same groundwork here to actually build the trust of the community and to help people. And so I think he's going to have problems because he hasn't lived in Missouri for the last 13 years. He moved here to run for this seat. And this is the show me state. And people expect you to, be very transparent.
In a state like Missouri, that's not a good quality.
So he's a carpetbagger.
Yeah, carpetbaggers in the heartland, in the Great Plains region of the United States, they do not.
And I'm not going to bad about that. I mean, but I am not a fan of moving anywhere to seek an office. To me, the person that runs for any office should organically be from the people of that place. And that's just how I feel in general, not to criticize. I honestly don't know this person, but and there's someone else as well in the Democratic primary.
Exactly. So the other one is Trudy Bush Valentine. This is a member of the Bush family dynasty of Anheuser-Busch. She announced about a week and a half ago. And so while some of us have been campaigning, I announced on May the 4th of last year and have been working 6+ days a week every day since. She came into the election about a week and a half ago, and she won't be at Springfield Democrat Days, one of our largest days as a party in the state this weekend. And she's got a lot to prove. I mean, she has money behind her. Obviously, she can self-fund to the tune of billions. But it's going to be hard for her to prove to people that she can earn their trust in that amount of time. And ultimately, I think that that's all that matters in an election.
Yep, and ironically enough, having a member of Anheuser-Busch's family in the race could actually be an advantage to you if you're putting in the groundwork. But it is unfortunate because to your neighbors to the east, the fact that Pritzker is running Illinois, I think, is a huge problem, and we have to stop. Again, when the Republicans do it, there's criticism, but if the Democrats do it, it's kind of like, well, they're actually fighting on our side. No, billionaires, multimillionaires run for office for their self-interest. That is a fact, and that is not changing. You need everyday people running for office because you need everyday experience to understand what it means to actually govern a statewide situation. So with that said, you definitely have the fire in the belly, which is what you need. Jen would never be convinced to run a statewide race.
No, I won't.
Especially state like Florida.
No, even Missouri, too big. I'll run a statewide race in Rhode Island. I'll run a statewide race in Delaware. I've got some places.
I'll tell you what, you'd be shocked how many fast food places you can find between St. Louis and Kansas City. I put out about 20 pounds in this thing. I need a narrower state next time.
No, but the difference but you know what the truth is? You really can run an effective race if you basically drive I-70. Like you really can. And if that's in any indication, Florida is a lot different because it's coastline properties and then rural properties, and it's a very uniquely shaped state. You could probably campaign Missouri 5 times over before you could campaign Florida. I mean,
Missouri's big, isn't it?
It is, but it's where you need to be.
It's meaty.
It's where you need to be.
Okay, so if I were going to visit Missouri, and I know obviously you go to St. Louis, you go see the Arch, yeah, that's cool and all. But like in terms of the geography of the state, what's the prettiest part of Missouri?
Oh boy. So I'd say Herman and Augusta are gorgeous. We have Missouri wine country here, and we do have rolling hills. And I'm not going to go tout the wine as good as Napa Valley or Sedona, but the experience is tremendous and the culture is phenomenal. And Missouri has a ton of these old German towns that have a history associated with that. And the breweries in Missouri are tremendous. But as far as like actual beauty goes,
like what's the prettiest part of Missouri?
Boy, next to the best barbecue place in town, usually. our barbecue is off the charts.
I'm not a meat eater, but anybody who has ever had a Kansas City ribeye will tell you that it's if you're going to eat red meat, that's where you got to do it.
Our rivers are beautiful. We have incredible bluffs, and we do have rolling hills, even though a lot of our state is flat. It's really a beautiful place to be. I'm happy. I'm a 4th generation Missourian. My son's a 5th generation, so I'm thrilled to be here.
We're happy that you're running. What do you do now that the St. Louis Rams are not there?
Oh, for God's sake. It all comes back to sports.
Who?
Well, if the St. Louis Rams are not there anymore, so
who's that?
Yeah. Oh, what are you a Chiefs fan or are you a Bears?
Oh, Chiefs all day. But outside of just the Chiefs, we got the Battlehawks coming back to St. Louis in the XFL.
The XFL is still a thing. That's amazing.
I don't even know.
I'm a diehard Cardinals fan. We have opening day tomorrow. I'll be there.
definitely, I will say, as a baseball fan,
Oh, good
the
God.
Cardinals fan base is one of the absolute best in Major League. So is the Cubs, which is why you guys probably have, for all intents and purposes, the best rivalry in Major League Baseball. It definitely is. It's a great part of the country.
I'd rather watch paint dry.
Well, that's okay. I love baseball, and to go to a game at Busch Stadium, or Busch Stadium 2 as it's known, to see the Cardinals play the Cubs, that would be a real treat one day. So maybe we'll make it happen.
Let me know when you're in town. I'll be happy to host you. We'll do a live feed from my office.
Sports invite. Don't invite Bob over. He'll never leave.
Hi, I'm Bob.
Wait, who's your baseball team, Bob?
I happen to be a Yankee fan, but I'm not a fan of the buying of the championships type.
And yet you called the Cardinals-Cubs rivalry a better rivalry than the Yankees-Boston rivalry?
Because of the dynamics of what those rivalries mean. You see, the difference between, and I'll give the Red Sox fans even more credit, but one thing about the Yankees is that the Yankees do not have a strong fan base if they're not winning. People will always show up to Busch Stadium and to Wrigley Field regardless of whether the teams are winning or not. Yeah. Now, that is a testament to the communal aspect of what those sports teams actually mean in the heartland and in the Midwest.
Okay, you're talking about places where people show up in those same towns when it's like 20 below and they're sitting in frostbite on the field.
That's true.
Baseball, of course, being summer, I know that's not a thing, but those are the same people that will sit at Soldier Field and be like, with
but if you've ever sat in the bleachers at Wrigley in July or August, you've never, like, you're a fried egg. And
it's roasting.
And the fans are so vicious. I bought a ticket off a scalper in Chicago, and he didn't tell me that it was directly behind a pole. And you look at the seat and it says view may be limited.
Obstructed,
Yeah, obstructed, exactly. I was behind a concrete post 10 times wider than me. That's a real rivalry.
It is. And of course, like we said, we're appreciative that you came on this evening. What is your website? How can people check you out, get involved?
Absolutely. It's just SpencerToder.com, just like it's spelled on the screen. You can click on the little face in the corner of me talking and it starts a conversation with me. I respond to the videos every morning when people have questions.
That's cool.
And I want to be the most accessible and accountable senator in history. And that starts with listening to people. So, there's always a way to get in touch with me. Anywhere you click on that website gets to me eventually. And I'd be happy to talk to anyone and everyone who's interested in getting involved in our campaign, because Missouri's capable and we're going to do it.
Jen, I think you've inspired somebody to run a service-based campaign. How do you like that?
I think it's awesome. Well, I don't know. He doesn't necessarily wasn't doing it because of us, but I think we're actually, I'm working on a book where that's the whole point of it, is transforming politics into service, and the idea of using campaigns as service, not just as the end result of getting somebody elected. Like, it shouldn't be so novel of an idea. And yet it is, because really, other than you, I don't know anyone else who's done what we've done.
Well, let's connect offline, because I got to tell you, every time I tell someone what we're doing, they say, "Oh my God, that makes so much sense." And it's like, right, yeah, because that's what we're supposed to be doing. And so
I came up with it. I'm not.
Well, I don't. Again, that's sort of. I didn't come up with it. I just decided I'm not going to spend 18 months of my life selling myself. First of all, I'm not a good salesperson. Second of all, then when you lose, you really have nothing to show for it. Okay.
Well, it's about how you define success, and I view success as making an impact on as many lives as possible.
Absolutely.
Which is why I want to be a senator. So if that's the case, then why wouldn't I be doing that when I'm running for office too? So I appreciate what you did, and I appreciate being able to follow in your footsteps in that regard, and I look forward to connecting.
Thank you.
Spencer Toder, guys, check him out. Give him some support. We'll be in touch, my friend.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a good night.
So that what he's talking about doing with the video on the website, that would be like what Ryan was sort of trying to do. But I don't know that it would come off as well.
No, you're right. And I think that this has got to be
personality matters. It
does. And then, of course, the evolution of what we've done and what more people will do. And again, not everybody was.
I agree, Linda. I agree 100%. They cannot stop talking about their sports games.
For a minute. Wasn't even that long.
He will turn any conversation into something about sports games, but I agree. Can we get more local candidates and state? We do. Oh my goodness, we're the only people I know that do that. Everyone else that doesn't do local and state candidate. We just had some. Who was it most recently?
We'll get Elijah back.
I'm losing my mind. JD JD Scholten was just on the other day. He's running.
I think he's talking about Florida, possibly.
No, well, just in general.
Our friend Mike Ellen is running for mayor of Tamarack, so we will definitely have him on.
Oh yeah. No,
Yeah.
we're not averse to it. The truth is, a lot of the local, our local politics are just not.
Hope you're doing well.
They're not
Leo.
inspired. It's not inspired, and that's the truth. And for the most part, other than Mike and a couple of smatterings of people, the majority of our local politics is not really worthy. I hate to say it, but it's just not. Like the candidates, the people, it's very uninspired. Somebody there's nobody like JD running right around here. You know what I mean? It's just not something. If there were, we would so want to have them on the show. If we had someone like India Walton running for mayor of Broward County, I assure you we would be very actively involved in that race.
If you guys only understood what South Florida politics was like.
You just don't understand.
Yeah, you guys think you have it tough in other places. You don't know what tough is.
So that's why we do tend to live vicariously through other places and states that have candidates that we find are more inspired. We had India on when she was running for mayor of Buffalo. We have all sorts of other people. We have legislators on from California, from Washington, from New York, from wherever.
Yeah.
Texas. We had 2 candidates running for Texas legislature on.
We may have the leading candidate for governor of Florida coming on, so we'll see what happens.
And we're going to get to talk to Charlie.
Mr. Smooth, as I like to call him.
He is very smooth.
He's just, and his tan.
Oh, it's George Hamilton level.
It is George Hamilton level.
It's George Hamilton level.
It is. He makes me feel very white.
Okay, first of all, you are very white. Okay, so today, our friend said was here. Maybe he's listening because he said he was going to listen tonight, but he's a handyman that does work for us. And he was over installing some lights today, and he was switching a light. And I don't like the white light. I like the soft, the difference.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and he's dark and I'm not. And I looked at him and he's like, I'm like, I am plenty white without the white light hanging over my head. Too white.
We do not have a set schedule for next week as of yet. However, we do have a big 420 podcast that is coming up.
Yeah, guys.
I will announce one of our guests as of right now is a pretty big one. John Fogelsang will be one of our main guests.
Fun. And wait, we don't need to review anymore, but I did think of somebody who I would like to invite.
Okay.
I would like to invite Anthony Clark. And I would like
that's a great idea.
And I would like to invite Gary Chambers. I know we've reached out to him.
We'll not be able to get him on 420, but we are going to get him.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, but that's good. But let's see if we can get Anthony, because I haven't seen him in a while, and he's good, and he'd be fun to hang out with on 420.
Pers, I can't answer that question. I don't think that's fair. I think we need to keep that to ourselves.
Okay. He's just messing with you. My only knowledge of any of that is from the book, The Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons. That's my only knowledge of any of that
Pers,
stuff.
I'll put it this way. If we ever get...
He might be, but I come from poor Jewish people. So from the pogroms in Russia escaping for their lives.
Well, if we ever get Bill Murray on the show, then you can say that maybe we are connected. I haven't successfully connected with Bill Murray yet, but if I ever do, and I'm sure Bill Murray has never done a podcast before, so I think if we were able to pull that
I don't think
off,
Bill Murray's ever done a podcast.
not that I know of.
He's not big into that stuff.
Why would he be?
Well, I don't know. I would be. So guys, we are going to have a really good 420 episode. We're going to have a few different people. We're going to go on at 4. I think we're going to go 4 to 6, correct?
Something like that.
And there'll be some really cool rotating people. Make sure to have comedians. It'll be really fun. I will do a episode of Stone History.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, I'll do Stone History, wherein we talk about cannabis history while I'm stoned. It's completely like the panoramic stoned history.
If you guys like what you saw tonight, if you like in general what we do.
What do we have coming up?
We do not have, we do have.
We have Kimberly Graham coming on Monday.
Friend of.
Speaking of people running for local politics.
Yes, speaking running for local politics, Kimberly Graham, who ran for the U.S. Senate in the great state of Iowa, was now running, or is now running, I should say, for Polk County attorney. And that is a very important position.
It really is. State attorney's job is so important.
Very important.
It's so important.
Tremendously important.
We had a lot invested in that race locally. That mattered a lot. It didn't go the way we really wanted it to go. But it didn't go as badly as it could have.
That is true.
So we ended up not in the worst way here, but that's a very important race. So, okay, so we have Kimberly set for Monday, and that's all as of right now. But there's always exciting things happening here, people.
There really is.
It's never a dull moment. Never a dull moment here.
Nope, definitely not. So with that said, we appreciate you guys. Glad you tuned in. We'll see you next week.